I thought the biggest surprise of my day would be meeting the man I was supposed to marry. Instead, I opened my front door to find a ragged priest and 9 half-starved children staring back at me, silent, hollow-eyed, and caked in dust. That was the moment everything I thought I wanted began to unravel. If you think this is just another story about a widow and a few orphans, stay with me. Before sundown, bullets would fly, a porch would burn, and I'd realize the life I'd been waiting for wasn't the one I was meant to live. And if this story moves you even just a little, please consider subscribing, liking, and leaving a comment. I'm a person with a disability, and every single interaction helps build a stronger, more visible community for people like me. Your one click could go a long way in helping voices like mine be heard. Thank you. Now let me tell you the rest of what really happened that day. They weren't supposed to come. I'd spent that morning like a woman preparing for a second chance, swept the porch, boiled coffee, even brushed my hair for the first time in weeks. James Ellison, my mail-order fiancé, was set to arrive by sundown. A banker, widowed polite in his letters, the kind of man who wanted a quiet life. I thought I wanted the same. So when the dust cloud rose over the ridge, I stood tall with my hands on my hips, expecting a single wagon. Instead, what rolled into view looked like a procession from some forgotten nightmare. A limping mule cart, a priest in worn robes, and 9 children clinging to each other like survivors from a shipwreck. I didn't move. Not at first. Just stood there while that priest, tall, gaunt eyes hollow like the rest, stepped down and nodded. "Ma'am," he said with a voice like sandpaper, "my name is Father Mateo Alvarez. These children, they need shelter. Just for the night." I opened my mouth to say no. I had every right to say no. But then I saw her. A little girl, maybe 6, stood near the back. Black hair matted with dust, eyes too big for her face. She didn't speak, didn't even blink. Just stared at me, silent and still, like she'd already seen the worst the world could offer. And in that moment, I swear to God, I saw my daughter. My legs moved before my mind did. I stepped off that porch and toward them, feeling something tear open inside me. Something I'd buried the night the blizzard took Annie. "Get them inside," I said, my voice low. "I've got bread. Not much, but it'll do." The priest's shoulders sagged with relief. The children didn't cheer, they didn't even smile, but they moved slowly, cautiously, like animals that had been kicked too many times to trust kindness. That was the day everything changed. The day I stopped waiting for peace and started preparing for a fight I didn't know was coming. Felt something, hit subscribe and type 1 below it, means more than you know. I heard the horse before I saw him. The kids were still at the pump, washing down stale bread like it was a banquet. Father Mateo was tending to little Noah, her forehead hot as a stovetop. I just laid her on my own bed when the sound of hooves reached my ears, steady, clean, not like the limping mules we'd been traveling with. And then I saw him. James Ellison. Tall in the saddle boots, polished coat free of dust like he'd stepped right out of a daguerreotype. His face lit up when he spotted me until he saw the others. His horse slowed, ears twitching. His smile faltered. "Clara," he called. "What? What is all this?" I stood at the porch rail, hands clenched so tight the skin ached. I should have explained gently. I should have told him over supper with warm pie and quiet music. But there was no time for gentleness. "Refugees," I said. "The orphanage in Denver burned. They've nowhere else to go." His jaw tightened. "You said your place was peaceful. You said it was just you." "It was," I said. "Until this morning." He dismounted stiffly. "Clara, we had plans. A wedding, a life. I left everything for this. And now you're playing nursemaid to children," I snapped. to children who watch their friends burn alive. He blinked. I rarely raised my voice. I didn't ask for this, I added softer now. I didn't plan it. But they're here, and I can't turn them away. Not after what happened to Noah. James looked toward the cabin where the child lay wrapped in my grandmother's quilt. His eyes softened for a moment, then hardened again. "If I leave," he said, "will you stop this?" I didn't answer right away. My heart screamed yes. My soul whispered no. Finally, I shook my head. I won't watch another child die. If that means losing you, so be it. James stared at me like I'd just spoken in a language he didn't understand. Then he turned mounted up and rode away, and I stood there, heartbreaking, knowing I'd just chosen war over comfort. Right over easy. If you believe in standing up for what's right, take a second to like, comment 1, and hit subscribe. It helps more than you know. They came just as the sun started bleeding into the hills, 3 riders in black coats moving like shadows against the dust. I was at the kitchen window rinsing blood from a rag I'd used on Noah's fevered lips when I saw them. Clean boots, pressed collars, not a speck of trail on them. City men. Trouble dressed like respectability. I stepped out onto the porch, shotgun resting against my shoulder. Father Mateo joined me a heartbeat later, his face pale but calm. The lead man smiled, polished, cold. "Good evening, ma'am," he said, tipping his hat like we were at Sunday service. "Arthur Langley, Union Continental. We're looking for a group that passed through here. A priest and several children, runaways. Possibly dangerous." My voice came out low and steady. "Dangerous? They can barely walk?" Langley's eyes didn't blink. There was a fire at a church-run facility in Denver. A lot of questions. We have reason to believe these children were involved. I wanted to laugh, or scream. "You think a 6-year-old girl started that fire?" I asked. "You think a mute child burned down her own home?" Langley's smile faded ever so slightly. "These things are rarely so simple." He glanced past me toward the cabin. I stepped forward, blocking his view. "You have no warrant? No jurisdiction out here." The man to his right, bigger, meaner looking, adjusted his coat like he was preparing to draw. Langley didn't stop him. "Let's not make this harder than it needs to be," Mrs. Bennett Langley said. "We both know those children don't belong here." I gripped the shotgun tighter. They belong anywhere someone's willing to keep them safe. And today, that's here. For a moment, nobody moved. Then Langley's smile returned. "This isn't over." "I know," I said. As they turned and rode off, I felt my knees shake. Behind me, Noah coughed from inside the cabin, a sharp, dry sound, like wood cracking in winter. That sound reminded me fear had no place in this house anymore. Not while I could still stand. And I did. If you're still with me, hit subscribe like the video and drop a 1 in the comments. It truly helps. I watched the riders vanish into the haze, their silhouettes swallowed by the dusk and dust alike. Only when they were gone did I let out the breath I'd been holding like a prayer. Inside the cabin was still. Too still. I stepped back through the door, the wood creaking under my boots. Noah lay curled in my bed, cheeks flushed with fever, her tiny chest rising too fast. Thomas was by her side, that brave boy, pretending not to be afraid, but his eyes betrayed him. "They gone?" he asked, voice barely above a whisper. "For now," I said, kneeling beside him. I dipped a cloth in the basin and pressed it gently to Noah's skin. Her body trembled under my touch. Father Mateo came in behind me carrying a tin of weak tea and what little medicine we had left. His face was tight with worry. "If they come back with more men..." "They will," I said, cutting him off. "Langley doesn't strike me as the type to give up." So what do we do? I looked around the room, the children curled up on blankets, some sleeping, some just staring. They were trying so hard to be invisible, to survive. I thought of James riding away, of the clean sheets I'd laid out for a wedding that would never come, of the life I thought I wanted, quiet, simple, untouched by anyone else's pain. But pain had come anyway. So I stood. I looked at Father Mateo, then Thomas, then Noah. We get ready, I said. We dig in. We gather food, find stronger medicine, seal the windows, load every bullet we have. Because if Langley comes back, he won't find scared children or a tired widow. He'll find a line drawn. Noah stirred, opening her eyes just enough to find mine. And in that fragile, fevered gaze, I didn't see fear. I saw hope. Thin, battered, flickering, but alive. And somehow, in that moment, I realized this wasn't the end of my story. It was the beginning of theirs. And I'd be damned if I let anyone take it from them. Before the storm hits, take a moment to like, comment, and subscribe. It means more than you know. We spent the next 2 days in a kind of sacred rhythm, the kind that comes when people know the storm is coming, but choose to build anyway. I boarded windows with Thomas, showed the younger ones how to boil water, sweep floors, mend tears. Father Mateo rode into town at first light, brought back quinine for Noah and a bottle of whiskey for my nerves, said it was for trade. But I think he knew I needed the burn. We worked from sunup to sundown, not because we believed it would be enough, but because we needed to try. That second night, while the others slept, I sat on the porch, shotgun across my knees, watching shadows crawl across the prairie. The wind carried a stillness I didn't trust, the kind that used to come just before a blizzard. And sure enough, just past midnight, I heard it. Hoofbeats. Not many this time. 2, maybe 3 horses, slow, cautious. I stayed seated, didn't move, didn't blink. Let them come. Langley's voice called out from the dark, smoother than whiskey and twice as sharp. Evening, Mrs. Bennett. Thought we'd try a quieter conversation tonight. Fewer witnesses, fewer misunderstandings. I stood slowly, keeping the barrel low but ready. That's so. He dismounted, didn't come closer, just stood there, hat in hand, like he was asking to borrow sugar. You're not a foolish woman, he said. You've seen enough to know how this ends. I have, I said. With you turning that fancy horse around and leaving these children the hell alone. His smile didn't reach his eyes. You've got backbone, I'll give you that. But backbone won't stop bullets. I took a step forward. Neither will empty threats. And for one long second he just stared at me, like he couldn't decide whether to be amused or angry. Then he tipped his hat again and rode off, swallowed by the night. But I didn't relax. Couldn't. Because that wasn't retreat. It was reconnaissance. He wasn't gone. He was planning. And the fire, the real fire, was still coming. By dawn, I knew Langley wasn't bluffing. The wind shifted before the light even touched the horizon, carrying with it the scent of sweat horse and gun oil. Not the kind of smell you get from cowboys passing through. This was something else. Intentional, heavy. Like blood in the dirt before the first shots even fired. I woke the children gently. No screaming, no panic. Just eyes meeting eyes, a hand on a shoulder. We moved like we'd rehearsed it, even though we hadn't. Thomas and I took up positions by the windows, rifles loaded. Father Mateo stood guard at the back, holding a rusted pistol he hadn't used in 10 years. The younger ones huddled near the cellar door, Noah among them, still pale but awake now, and watching me like she already knew how this would end. I kissed the top of her head before I shut the cellar door. If Langley was going to make this a war, I'd make sure they survived it. The riders came at full gallop, 5 of them this time. No more friendly smiles, no fake pleasantries. Just guns drawn and eyes dead. Langley rode in the middle like a general who already smelled victory. I stepped onto the porch with my shotgun. "Last chance, Mrs. Bennett," he shouted. "Move aside." "You had your chance," I said. "You wasted it." They didn't hesitate. The first shot cracked the air and ripped into the porch rail beside me. I dropped to one knee and returned fire. Heard Father Mateo shout something from behind the house. Saw Thomas fire from the window and hit one of their riders square in the shoulder. The world went sideways. Smoke screams splintered wood. Time slowed. I heard my own breath, felt the shotgun buck against my shoulder, saw one of the men fall and another rush the porch. And through it all, I remembered Noah's eyes. Wide, trusting, and not afraid. Because she believed I'd stand, so I did. Even when the porch caught fire. Even when my arm burned from the heat. Even when the bullets came faster than I could reload. I stood. When the gunfire stopped, it was so quiet I thought I'd gone deaf. Smoke hung in the morning air like a shroud. The porch was half-gutted flames now, just embers licking charred wood. Blood darkened the dust where one of Langley's men had fallen. The others had fled, some wounded, all broken. Langley himself lay in the dirt, his coat torn, his pride worse. I stood over him, shotgun still in hand, smoke rising from the barrel. My arm throbbed from where a splinter had ripped through my sleeve. I didn't feel heroic. I felt hollow, like the adrenaline had carved out something inside me I didn't know was there. Langley looked up at me, his mouth twisted in disbelief. "You don't know what you've done," he rasped. "No," I said, leveling the barrel an inch from his heart. "I know exactly what I've done. I chose them." He didn't speak again. Father Mateo limped toward me, his shoulder bleeding but his hand steady. "He's done," he said. "The law won't touch him, but he won't touch us either. Not after today." Thomas appeared behind him, eyes wide, chest heaving. "Noah's safe. So are the others." I nodded, finally lowering the shotgun. I should have felt relief, triumph, maybe even peace. But what I felt was something deeper, like a piece of me long buried had finally opened its eyes. We buried the dead behind the barn. Didn't know the man's name, didn't matter. The others would ride back to whatever city desk wrote checks for men like him. And we started over. That evening I sat beside Noah, her small fingers wrapped around mine. She leaned her head on my shoulder without a word. No questions, no fear, just trust. And in that moment, I didn't think about the wedding dress still folded in the chest, or the man who'd ridden away. I thought about the fire, the one that burned the old life down, and the one that lit the new one. At its heart, this story is about courage, compassion, and the power of choosing what's right over what's easy. Clara's journey reminds us that true strength isn't found in comfort or safety, but in sacrifice, in standing up for the vulnerable when no one else will. We all carry wounds, but healing often begins when we reach beyond ourselves to protect others. This tale isn't just about survival. It's about redemption, purpose, and finding family in the most unexpected places. Sometimes the life we didn't plan becomes the one that saves us. Thanks for watching. If you want more stories that stay with you long after the screen fades, tap the next video. I'll see you there.